Hi and welcome to another video from the CTAD Clinic. My name is Dr. Mike Lloyd and I'm the Clinic Director. In the video today I'm going to be looking at a very common occurrence that takes place within therapy sessions, and from the comments that I've received on the YouTube channel I know that this is a very common thing that people are dealing with out there in the world as well. So this is specific to people with dissociative identity disorder or other specified disorders, where there are clear internal parts or alters or others that are influencing or taking control of behaviour and are managing things in a way that people consider to be bad. So I use the word bad not because that's what I think they're doing, but that's the word that is being described when people are talking to me about these alters or parts or others, that their behaviour is in some way harmful, distressing to others, causes problems, causes distress, causes grief, fractures relationships, can have all sorts of different impacts. And it gets labelled bad. And one of the questions that people say is, why do I have this? I'm a good person, I'm just trying to go through life, and yet I have these alters which are doing these terrible, awful or bad things. Why is this happening? And I just need to understand, I need to know what they're doing. And realistically, I think the position comes down to there are two different ways that we can look at to try and understand why an alter might be behaving in a way that we would consider to be particularly difficult or challenging for the person, and for the person then to read that as being bad. The first thing is that people often with trauma or abuse, difficult backgrounds, they cannot see the world as being the safe place that it's being described to them. So people talk about the world being safe, that you can go off and you can do things and it's absolutely fine, and they see people doing this all the time, going to the shops, going to cinemas, going to cafes, whatever it might be, and they're doing okay. So the fact that people don't consider the world to be safe often means that there's a disconnect, that there's a wrongness taking place sometimes. So people often internalise that as them being bad. They're doing it wrong. I don't get to be able to do the things that everyone else is doing, therefore there is something wrong with me. It's kind of a logical statement to make, and it is particularly difficult when it is being reinforced by messages from other people. So particularly in childhood, let's say parents or caregivers are reinforcing this message by calling the child bad. They are either hurting the child or they are insulting or criticising or judging the child. So badness becomes like an internal sense of self that is deeply held. So we talk in cognitive behavioural therapies, we talk about this being the core belief. I am bad, I am wrong, nothing I do will ever be correct. This is a very standard position for lots of people to take. It's desperately sad that it's there, but that is the position that people end up with, no fault of their own. So the first take on why alters might be bad is that it's this representation of the inner sense of badness. So a person believes that they're bad, so therefore the behaviour is bad, which somehow maintains the equilibrium between the internal and the outside world. I can't do things right, therefore I'm bad, so look at me doing all of these things particularly wrong. So it's a manifestation of the belief. So the behaviour is bad because the internal belief is of badness. And even when people talk about, I am a good person, I'm a decent person, when you really get into it in therapeutic terms, often there's this sense of I'm wrong, I'm broken, I'm bad, there is something wrong with me. And we see the alter behaviour as being the manifestation of this belief. It does not mean the person is bad, it just means that the behaviour is doing something which really reinforces this sense of badness, because that's a solidity. And when people often have traumatic childhoods and they have chaotic adult lives, a sense of solidity can be a very powerful thing. So this belief system is the first part of why we think alters may behave in bad ways. There are other reasons, but these are the key ones that we pick up therapeutically time and time again. The other one is about control. That often again with traumatic and abusive childhoods, people do not have a sense of control. Very few children are in control anyway. You gain this throughout adolescence and into adulthood. But the sense of being in control, the knowledge that you can control something, that you can be the agent of your own destiny, is often just not there for people in survival mode. All they're doing is they're thinking about the present, they're thinking about the moment. To consider control and having direction and purpose in life is really a luxury that many people cannot afford to have. So therefore they sit with this sense of I need to be in control of something, but I'm not in control of anything. Now, interestingly, behavioural psychology shows us, in terms of stimulus and response theory, that if you do something, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you walk into a room and you call someone a name or you hurt them in some way, you're going to get a reaction from that person. Now, that's not a good thing to do, obviously, but it does get the reaction. And that's called a predictable response. If you do something, you get a predictable response. If you give something out of kindness and out of charity, you get thanks, you get appreciation. If you call someone a name or you shout at someone, you're going to get hostility in return. That's a predictable series of responses. Now, if you lack control in all aspects of life or in the key aspects of life, and yet you can, in an environment, you can behave in a particular way that guarantees that you're going to get a particular response, especially in a traumatic childhood, that response, that hostile response may be entirely understandable, and weirdly it might be comforting to know that the world is predictable. Even though it's hostile and challenging, I can make it predictable. I can make people do something in a way that I'm choosing to do. Now, again, the sense of badness is not helpful to a person because that might have been a survival construct early in life, but later in life it's really not helpful. But it is predictable, and therefore there is a comfort in being able to predict the environment. Knowing how to make something happen is a luxury, and actually if you've got the ability to do that in a positive way, that's fantastic. And if you don't have it in a positive way, you can certainly make it happen in a negative way. Now, most people that we work with have a sense of conscience, have a sense of guilt and shame about the way they are and the way they conduct themselves in the world. So to actually behave in this way, to get that predicted response, it's not going to be a thing that they're going to want to do. It would be really quite a phobic response for them to do this. But if you have an alter who is lacking any concept of context or consequence, that alter can behave in a way which guarantees the response. So in the therapeutic room, what can happen is that alter pops out, insults the therapist, disappears in again. The therapist can get a bit shocked or a bit upset by that, and internally they're going, see, I can make this person do or feel something by choice. Now, in therapeutic terms, we'll get that, we'll understand that. Out in the real world, absolutely not. That's going to get a lot of pushback. So therefore, the person is shamed further by that alter's behaviour. They feel that they're a bad person, they feel they're a worse person, and that reinforces the original construct of why that alter might be behaving like that, the internalised belief of being bad. We see this then as being what we call a closed loop. So we have a belief system which enacts a series of behaviours which manifests itself in a controlled environment which gives predictability, gets that pushback, creates shame, creates guilt, further reinforces the belief of badness, and it goes round and round and round in circles, and the person is stuck. And the therapist's job is to undo that stuckness. Now, we don't have time for that in the video today, but we will be looking at this further on down the line. So I hope it's given some sort of sense of understanding. It's all about building the picture and understanding the logic behind a behaviour of an alter. And if we can understand that logic, again we start addressing with compassion and empathy towards the part or the alter that is needing to operate in that way in order to gain the response, which is strangely of comfort within an internal system. Might not be comforting on the outside, but that's not what survival mode is all about. It's about comfort on the inside. So I hope this has been useful. I know I've talked in quite depth about this. I hope this is, maybe this is something that needs to be watched a couple of times just to get your head around it, or it might be that it's just really understandable and it really just kind of, triggers that sense of, I get it, that makes sense. So please leave some feedback in the comments about the video. It's always welcome to receive. We'll be putting more videos out from the CTAD channel, as we always will be doing. So in between now and the next video, please do take great care.